All right, hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Chase. The only gateway into comics is you. We've displaced over $2.5 million in the industry, and that is just so far. This is what freeing the market looks like, and we're ready to push the envelope all the way into the future. How's it going? How's it going? We're talking writing process just like every day, and so we were just talking about developing tons of scenes using that method that I was talking about that I learned from James Patterson with taking note cards and writing our scenes, each individual scene on note cards. I actually have some blank ones here today. Yeah, it's a really good habit to get into. Of course, you can just list them off on paper. You'll do a lot of crossing off. That's why I prefer to do this. And you can change up the order. You can take them out without feeling bad, you know, if it's a scene that needs to be replaced. And we're going to go into what makes a scene good today. We're getting further and further into the process of getting to the script. And like I said, we're almost completely through that outlining process. We're going to continue. This is cool. Kind of a beautiful function of the mind. So we think and feel in pictures generally, right? So when we think of an abstract concept like freedom, a picture comes into our mind. Some people, I mean, if you're in America, some people will immediately think of the eagle, right? Or even the flag will come to some people's mind, right? Because that's what people see. So that's powerful, right? Using symbolism and imagery to convey a specific kind of feeling towards something and an abstract concept as well. Those things are really powerful, and that's the power of comics, right? Because what are comics? They're a language of the subconscious mind, right? Because they're visual moments that are trapped in time, right? They're small representations of larger events that occurred in just a little piece of it. So 1 second moment from it, you know? So a great exercise I use, kind of for brainstorming scenes. It's simple. So generally I'm listening to some sort of instrumental music. It actually really helps me let the pictures flow through my mind. Again, if you want to listen to the same instrumental sci-fi jazz I listen to, I put the link in the description below for the channel I always listen to. It's weird music. It's either that or classical is what I prefer to listen to. But so I close my eyes and I start thinking about the beginning, and I go through events one by one, and I see them occurring, right? And I ask myself some questions, you know, how are my characters acting, right? What reveals itself? What's happening in the scene? How are people acting toward each other, right? I write it all down, right? And sometimes, you know, we already know the structure of a scene without even knowing that we know the structure of a scene. And so, you know, visualizing it is making it occur, in a sense. We're discovering it as it unfolds, and it happens in our mind, and that's that creative power of our minds to have those visual experiences with emotions. And again, what we really want to capture here is emotion, right? And I'll tell you why. This perfect quote right here. By the way, this is an incredible book. I'm going to get back to it here in a minute. A story by Robert Mckee. This is my very, very favorite quote from it. He says, "When talented people write badly, it's for one of two reasons generally. They're blinded by an idea they feel compelled to prove to the world, or they're driven by an emotion they must express." SJW Marvel. That's exactly why they don't write well. When talented people write well, it's generally for this reason. They're moved by a desire to touch the audience. And that is so true. That last book, in fact, that I reviewed right here, this book touched the audience, and this writer clearly was moved by a desire to touch the audience, because he really did make it happen. He really did make you feel something. That's why it's such an incredible book, and it's a standalone. Really? That's the best quote ever. And that's exactly what we're after. So we want to capture emotions in snapshots in time. That's what this is all about. That's what scene structure is all about. We need that emotion behind it. And that's the most important thing to glean from that picture in your mind. Communicate it, put it on the page, right? Because we're doing that in words, because we're the writers. And I mean, you may be a great artist and you're doing that all together. I'm telling you, if you're that awesome, I have so much respect for you. The Chip Zdarsky's, the Sean Gordon Murphys, and look, Ethan Van Sciver is also writing his Sciver Frog. That's great. You know, it's fantastic when you can create an amazing product by being the writer and the artist. Wow, hats off to you. Keep up the great work. I don't do art. I'm a word artist. Okay, so during this whole process, taking that emotional and psychological response to it, putting it on the page, you want to make notes of what was the most powerful thing about it to you, what made the biggest impact, what in that image, what could you convey to your reader to have them feel that exact same thing, right? And so often I'll take a moment to think about kind of a new encounter or obstacle that could be relevant, right? And then bam, I write it on a note card, and there's another scene that happens because I, you know, drew it into existence, so to speak. And again, you know, because comics are such a visual art, visualizing scenes is one of the most useful and helpful tools I've ever used for this medium specifically. And so a few more things about scenes. I'll tell you what, we'll put this off to the side, and I don't even know if I'm going to write anything. I might as well open this up to have a you know, a clear white surface or whatever for. And so, okay, I'm talking regarding scenes more than anything. So this is what I feel the golden rule of scenes is. It's important to absolutely be able to identify the absolute function of every scene, okay? Whether it's concluding something, revealing something, building actions, creating consequences for actions. All of the scenes are meant to drive the story forward. Everything is meant to drive the story forward. If it doesn't, then you probably want to remove it or change a lot of it, right? So for now, we're just kind of conceptualizing these scenes, but we'll put them under a hard focused lens pretty soon later and analyze them even more. Here's the biggest no-no. If your scene only exists to drop a little bit of exposition onto your readers, that scene, like I said, needs to be reworked, needs to be changed or completely taken out. And a bit more about some kind of loose structure guidelines here. In the beginning, you want to establish the why, the who, the what, and at the end, you want to contrast what happened in the beginning with a different charge. And what I mean here, and this is another thing from Story by Robert Mckee, by the way, I recommend that book. The natural flow and the natural charge that a scene holds moment to moment can be negative, positive, or neutral, right? And doubles, of course, dignify very negative or very positive. Of course, you can't have a very neutral. So here's a good example. In here, we want to, the charge wants to change. And I know I talked about that a little bit as I was talking about, I don't know, one of the books that I reviewed. And I was talking about how scenes need to have a charge. Maybe it was even Unstoppable Wasp, I don't know. I'll get to another thing in there too. But so think about this scene, okay? Imagine a detective ventures into a crime scene. It's in the worst part of town, and so right around the corner is where the audience, the reader, knows that the killer is hiding out, right? This starts on a very negative charge. The detective doesn't know he's there, but he's in a life-threatening situation. So let's say that he finds what he was looking for, and he gets away undetected, and something concludes, right? And that's him getting what he needs. He gets the boon, the ultimate advantage is found. So yes, that scene had a purpose. It goes from negative in the beginning to positive because he gains that boon, that advantage, and bam, that's a good scene. In a small snapshot, that is the only thing really to consider from that point is pacing that scene. And of course, we're going to get to that. I appreciate all of those comments about that. Once again, thank y'all so much for commenting. It's super helpful just to get involved in the conversation. Keep me, recommending things that y'all want to see is fantastic, and I appreciate that a lot. And of course, it's still coming up. We are going to talk about pacing soon. So, kind of summarize this real quick. You're starting on a negative charge, ending in a positive, or vice versa. It's imperative to having great scenes. And even if it's not a plot point that we're talking about, some shift or change has to happen in the scene to know something occurred, because otherwise it's pointless, right? Remember that scene from Unstoppable Wasp, right? They go into the restaurant that happens in the beginning, and they just sit there and they talk to this chef, and he does nothing other than just emotionally validate this wasp girl, this crazy drooling person, and they have this pointless discussion, right? And nothing happens, there's no charge in the beginning, there's no charge in the end, there's no tension whatsoever. They're just sitting in this restaurant, and then a sound effect happens at the end. What a pointless scene. Oh my god, we could have just had that sound effect in the last scene, and then Ghostbusters could have appeared across the street. Anyway, it wouldn't have mattered where they were. They literally just went to the restaurant so that the Ghostbusters could be across the street. It's absolutely horrible writing. So once again, of course, everything needs to have a reason as well. But there needs to be a charge. It needs to start with a negative emotional charge and end with a positive, or vice versa. And that's the whole bottom line. If it does change from positive to negative, you will also want to kind of have something conclude, or something learned, or some big reveal to happen when you go in a negative, a downward way. Something concludes and you feel better, so something has to happen, just like I said. So again, have to cut this short here. That's great. Had plenty of time right there. About 13 or 14 minutes. Fantastic. So we're going to go, of course, more writing this week, more in terms of story, more in terms of hiding exposition, right, in our stories, more in scene development, scene placement. We'll talk more about secondary characters. We'll talk about guidelines and steps, getting closer and closer to having our full outline so we can begin scripting. And again, tomorrow is new comic book day, and you can almost be sure that I'll have another book destroyed by my flamethrower. So I will see you tomorrow. The only gateway into comics is you. Write well and you'll sell well. Welcome to my channel, all about phase 2, making comics great. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one.